following video is a webinar of the bestsellers report that we did for Rick's Enterprise. What I'm going to show you is all the ins and outs of the bestseller report, how to run it. We're going to take a look at it and we're going to see some different examples of ways that you can run the bestseller report. Before I start in the bestseller section, I'm actually going to show you a class setup because during the report, we're going to talk about running the bestseller by class. So I just wanted to review the different levels of classes that you can possibly have in Enterprise. When running a bestseller report by class, you can do it by different class levels. So when I talk about running it by the top level, the first level, if you have, in this example, we have 3 levels of classes. We have level 1, which is the top one where you see footwear. Level 2, which is men's footwear. And then level 3 is the actual classes like men's walking, men's trail, etc. So when I say run a bestseller report by the top level, it means that you're only looking at the top level. So on the report, it's going to be a shorter report. It's going to show your bestsellers for the top level. So it's only going to list, in this example, footwear and how footwear did, apparel, lifestyle, sock, accessories, etc. If you run it by the second level, it will go down to this level. So it will show you just men's footwear, women's footwear, youth footwear, racing footwear, etc. So it will tell you the bestsellers within that second level. And then if you go to the third level, it will list the best-selling classes on the specific level, since this is the last level, the bottom level. What are your best-selling classes? Is it men's walking, men's trail, men's light stability, etc.? So that's what I talk about when we go over the classes in the bestseller report. To get to the bestseller report, you're going to click on Reporting up at the top, Sales, and Bestsellers. And note that this is one of our most common reports that people run. This will bring you into the bestseller report. On every report that you go in Rick's Enterprise, you'll see this report name field. So if this is a report that you run a lot, what you can do is you can name this report and select the criteria that you want, and then down at the bottom you can click on Save Report. So then at any point in time during the day, the week, the month, if you want to come in and run that saved report, all you have to do is click on the magnifying glass icon and the lookup, and this will bring up your list of saved reports. Then you can just select the saved report that you want, select it, it'll come up on the screen, and then click on Add Job and Run. So that's a real easy way to run reports that you tend to run a lot. You don't have to name a report and save it, but that's a great option. The other thing is you can name a report and you don't have to save it, and that name will come up on the report history. So when you're looking at your report history of all your reports, you can easily tell which one is which. So you can either name it and save it, or just name it and run it, either way. The second area is this output method. The default is always to PDF. You have other options, Excel and comma delimited as well. Every single report will have this. So you'll be able to either to run it to report format, which is PDF, Excel, your Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, or comma delimited. We're just going to choose PDF on this. Each report that you go into is going to have the 3 different tabs, or sometimes even more than that. But the common tabs are going to be the report options and report criteria, or report options, report criteria, and printing options. We're going to start off with talking about the report options. The first section on the bestseller report is which sales period would you like to analyze. So once I click on the drop down by the sales period, you have many different options to choose from. Basically, I'm running a bestseller report and I want to look at my best-selling items either by week to date, previous week, month to date, previous month, season to date, previous season, year to date, previous year, last number of months, selected days, yesterday, and today. One of the big things is the selected data option. You can select whatever date range you want. So if I click on the select dates, I can just plug in whatever date range that I want to look at. A lot of people tend to run this bestseller report when they're running their end of month reports. So I'm in December right now. If I want to look at my bestsellers for November, I can choose previous month and it will automatically put the date range of November 1st through November 30th. And that's what we're going to do on this example. The next section is, what do you want to see the best of SKUs by? So if I click on the drop down, our options are stores, supplier, class, custom entry and color, SKU, SKUs by supplier, SKUs by class, and SKUs by custom entry and color. So if I have multiple stores and I want a bestseller report and I just want it to list my stores, it's going to be a real short report. It's just going to list your top selling stores from top to bottom. So you'll be able to see if store 1 is selling better than store 2 as a whole. It combines all of your sales for store 1, all of your sales for store 2, and then it ranks those stores. So this is if you want to see what your best selling stores are and you're just strictly looking at stores. The next one is supplier. This one is kind of like stores, but it's suppliers. So it's going to strictly list all of your suppliers on one report. So it'll list Nike, New Balance, Brooks, whatever suppliers you have, and it's going to list those suppliers on your report. It's not going to list the SKU detail. What it does is, for example, Nike, it will combine all the SKUs that you've sold in Nike and it will just list Nike, and it will give you a total quantity, total units that you've sold, and total net sales that you've sold. This is basically just ranking your suppliers so you can easily tell what are your best selling suppliers. The same goes for class. If I choose class, I'm looking at just a list of my classes and my best selling classes from top to bottom. And when you choose class, this is what shows up, class depth. So that's why I showed you the list of classes and the different levels when we first started, because if you want to just look at all your classes, so that way you'll be able to see what is your best selling classes from top to bottom, you will just leave this blank and that'll go clear to the bottom level and you'll be able to tell exactly what classes are selling best down to that, in this example, third level, the detailed classes. If you want just a list of your top level, you know, footwear, apparel, or however you have it set up in your system, then you can put a 1 there and it's strictly just going to run the bestseller report and just look at the top level to see what are your best sellers in those. So that'll be a lot shorter report for you if you choose just the top level. If you have 3 levels, you know, maybe you just want to go down to the second level. You don't want to look at, you know, the detail of, you know, men's cross training. You want to go down to the second level, then that's where you would put a 2 there. So that's what that class depth field means. When you look at group by, this is something fairly new. If I want to run just a list of my classes, but I want to group it maybe by supplier, what this will do is it will list the supplier and then it will rank the classes within that supplier. Then it will move on to the next supplier and it will rank those classes from top to bottom within that supplier. So that's another way of looking at things if you want to go that route. And you can do vice versa as well. If I want to do my best of suppliers but I want to group by class, I can choose best of supplier and then group by class. So in this example, it will list the class and then all the suppliers associated with that class in best sellers format from top to bottom. What's the best selling item sorted that way. I can also do best of custom entries if you have any custom entries in your system where it will do a bestseller report based on your top selling custom entries to your bottom, or if you're doing color. Then there's SKU. If I strictly just want a list of my top selling SKUs, say I want to look at my top 100 selling SKUs, I could select SKU and I could go over to which items do you want to show, and I could select top number of items and put 100 in here, And that would list my top 100 selling SKUs. It doesn't matter what class they're in or what supplier they're in. It's going to give me my top 100 SKUs in the store if I choose best of SKU. Then I have SKUs by supplier. This is a nice one because this will tell you what are my top selling SKUs by supplier. So it will list the supplier and then the top selling SKUs within each supplier. So say you want to look at what are my top 10 items per supplier, top 5 or top 10. Then you could go to the top number of items and put a 5 or put a 10 there. And that would list the supplier and the top 5 SKUs in order. Go to the next supplier, it'll list the top 5 SKUs in order, and on and on. Now this works the same way if I choose the one that says SKUs by class. And I want to look at the top 5 or top 10 SKUs in each class. It'll list that class, and then it will list the top 5 SKUs within that class. And you can also do the same for SKUs by custom entry. If you want to list the custom entry or color, and then the top number of SKUs by that custom entry or color. Now the next section at the bottom is how do you want to sort the results? So in this example, I want to look at my top suppliers. Now I want to know how do I want to rank these. Do I want to look at the quantity sold? So it would list the supplier and the units, the top number of units to the bottom number of units. So it would list Nike, New Balance, whatever suppliers that you have, and it will rank those by the top units sold. So you'll see the suppliers at the top that you have sold the most units, and then it will just go from top to bottom. The other options how to rank these, you can rank them by net sales. So I could look at my top number of suppliers by the net sales. So it will list the top net sales to the bottom net sales. I can do it by profit. I can rank them by return on investment, by turns, by inventory value, and by sell-through. On this one, I'm just going to choose net sales. Moving up to the top right, we have what is the minimum quantity sold that you would like to analyze. So you can put a minimum quantity sold in there if you just want to analyze just a minimum number. The next section is which items do you want to show? Do I want to look at all my items, or do I want to look at just a top number of items? I can also look at best above a cutoff point or worst below a cutoff point. When you choose these options like best above a cutoff point or worst below a cutoff point, that's if you're running like a worst sellers report, that will go hand in hand with how do you want to sort the results. So if you're looking at worst below a cutoff point and you're looking at quantity sold, and I decide that my cutoff point of items to print is 1, it's going to print a report of items that you haven't sold any units. This way you can identify poor performing SKUs that have not sold any units at all in your store and decide whether you need to mark those items down, get together with your supplier and see if you can send some of those items back, re-merchandise, do what you can do to free up space for those items that aren't selling and bring in new merchandise that will sell. Then there's how to display coupons. If you want to display coupons, you can either do summary, detail, or if you don't want to display them, keep them on none. The next section is how would you like to treat your stores? So a couple things. If you are a single store, you're obviously going to keep this on separate stores. There is an option to combine stores. This is if you have multiple stores. Separate stores will print that store, the bestsellers, and then if you have another store, it will move on to store 2 or that next store and do the same thing. It will list those items in bestseller format. If you combine the stores, then it will just combine and put your top sellers combined. So if you're doing like a SKU level bestseller report, it would combine the SKUs and wouldn't list it more than once. It would just list that one SKU, and that would be the combined sales of all your stores in that. The next section is how do you want to value your inventory? So this is the on-hand section, and the bestseller report on the left-hand side of the report shows your on-hand information, and on the right-hand side of the report shows your sales information. So if I want to look at my on-hand based on average cost, I would choose average cost. I can look at my on-hand based on retail, my selling price, current cost, or markdown cost. The common one is average cost because I want to know exactly what my on-hand is by cost, actual cost. The next part is date. As of what date do I want to see my on-hand? So if I'm running an end-of-month report, most likely I want to look at what my on-hand was as of the last day of the previous month. I don't want to know what my on-hand as of today. I want to look at what my on-hand was as of, in this example, November 30th. And this next section is if you do transfers, if you have multiple stores and you do transfers and you use the in-transit feature, when you transfer items out of one store and it does not go into the next store until you receive them, so we put it in an in-transit bucket. So if you want to value the in-transit inventory that hasn't hit the store yet, hasn't hit the receiving store yet, as on hand at the receiving store, you'll want to check that. Okay, so the next part is the Report Criteria tab. This is where we can make any selections that we want. If we want to narrow things down, or if we're only looking at a particular supplier or class or classes, we can do that here. If I just strictly wanted to look at all my suppliers and how they were ranked in bestsellers, I would just leave this Report Criteria blank. But if I was wanting more of a SKU detail report, say for New Balance, I could go down to by supplier and I could put in that supplier code. So if I was doing it for New Balance, I would probably be running it by SKUs for the best of. You know, I want to know my top number of SKUs for New Balance. Or SKUs by class. If I wanted it to break out each class and the top number of SKUs for each class in New Balance. So that's if you're being more detailed and doing a specific supplier or suppliers or specific classes. So I could click on the drop down and I could, if I only wanted to look at footwear and I wanted a bestseller report to rank all my footwear, I didn't want to know all the accessories or apparel or anything like that. I strictly wanted to do footwear, then I could select footwear. You could do just a specific store. Up at the top, you can, if you're multi-stores, you can choose your store that you want to do. If you just want to do a particular store, you can do colors, SKUs, sizes even. The by column would be your size grids and by row would be your row type size grids. And then if you had any product custom entries, you could do that as well. So a lot of people will say, I want to run a bestseller for just a particular season. You know, I want a bestseller for maybe this season. Maybe I wanted to look at my bestsellers for spring and summer 2010, and I could choose that season there, and it would only look at those items that the SKUs were coded to spring and summer 2010, or however you have your season set up. I can do it by coupon code. I can include only SKUs at retail price, include only SKUs at markdown price, and include only SKUs with perks. I could also exclude certain information. So if I wanted to run a bestseller on all my suppliers except for New Balance, then I could go to the supplier area and I could type in the New Balance code. And then I could click on the exclude to the right. And that would print a bestsellers report for everything but New Balance. And the last tab on this report is the printing options. And all this really has is if I want to print my ROI and turns, I can check that, and that way it will print my ROI and turns on the report. So now let me show you some examples of some different kinds of reports that you can run. I have saved just a bunch of different varieties. So with the bestseller, there's so many different ways that you can run this report. It just kind of depends on how you want to do it for your business. So I can click on my lookup here, and this will bring up all of the saved reports that I have put in here. So this way I could easily come in and find one of the saved reports that I set up and that I like to run, and I can just select that report. It'll come up on the screen and I can click on Add Job and Run to run it. So one of the ones that I have done is Bestsellers Top Suppliers by Net Sales. So if I select this, it's going to bring up that report. And basically what it's telling me is I want to look at the previous month and I want to look at my top suppliers. So it's going to rank my suppliers from top to bottom. And it's doing it by net sales. So if I scroll down, I see how do you want to sort the results? Net sales. And I'm doing all items because I just want to look at all my suppliers. It has nothing to do with the SKU detail. It just strictly is ranking my suppliers and putting them from top selling suppliers to the bottom. Here's one, bestsellers, best 5 SKUs by class. So this is doing the top 5 SKUs sorted by class, and it's doing it by net sales. So I can select that, and you'll see how I have that set up. So what do you want to see the best of SKUs by? And the best of is going to be SKUs by class. And then you'll see to the right, I have show items, top number of items, and I only want to look at the top 5. So in this report, it's going to list the class and my top 5 SKUs in order of net sales. So it's going to show the top net sales to the bottom net sales of each SKU within each class. And it'll show 5 of them. Here we have top 100 SKUs by quantity. So if I select that, this is how that will look on the report when you're making your selections. So since I want to look at my top 100 SKUs by quantity sold, I'm going to choose best of SKU, and then over to the right I have top number of items, and I want to look at my top 100 SKUs. So it doesn't matter what class or supplier they're in, it's just going to list my top 100 SKUs. And since I'm doing it by quantity sold, I choose quantity sold and how do you want to sort the results. That way it's going to put my top number of units sold to my bottom number of units sold. And another good one is maybe you don't want to do a best sellers report, you want to do a worst sellers report. So on this one I did worst selling SKUs by quantity for the last 6 months. So if I select that, you'll see now how the sales period has changed. So instead of doing previous month, I changed it to last number of months, and I want to look at the last 6 months. I'm doing SKUs by supplier, and I'm doing worst below a cutoff point. Anything that I haven't sold any units, it's going to list those SKUs on the report. So now we're going to actually go into the report history, and I'm going to show you some of those reports and what they look like. So that last one that I just talked about was the worst selling report for the last 6 months. So we're going to go ahead and click on this and select it and click on open. So once you open this up, you can stretch your window to make this bigger so you can see it. You can also click on the zoom in tool, click on that, click on the screen, and that'll make that report bigger for you as well. Or if you want to make it smaller, you can do zoom out and click on the screen, and that makes it smaller. So it's going to list my supplier and my SKUs that I haven't sold any units of. So if I scroll down this report, I'll see my suppliers, and within that I'll see the SKUs that I haven't sold any units, or if I see negatives, if they've been returned. So in this example with the New Balance SKU, the M856WN, I have 183 on hand. My total cost is $9,333, and looking at the age, the first time I received them in was 41 days ago, and the last time I received them in was 21 days ago, and I have not sold one pair. That's taken up a lot of my inventory. What is the reason why I haven't sold these at all? So you can really take a look at this and decide, can I get with the supplier and send some of these back? What do I need to do here? Do I need to mark them down or what? Let's free up the space so we can get a new product that's going to sell. I would say one of the most popular reports would be to run something like best-selling SKUs by class or by supplier, either one, looking at net sales. So if I select this one, SKUs by class by net sales, and open this one up, and in this one I looked at my top 10 SKUs per class, and I'm ranking them from top net sales to bottom net sales. So if you don't see 10 SKUs under each class, it just means that there's not 10 SKUs under that class. So here you have a couple SKUs, and that'll tell you the net sales, and it will rank that from top to bottom. So here I have men's pants, that's a class, and the top 10 items for that class, all by net sales. So you see $516, then $360, and then $318.50 and $280. That goes from top to bottom, ranking those SKUs within that class. So you can really tell what your top selling SKUs are within that class based on net sales. And you could run it by quantity, so it would do units instead of, it would rank it by units instead of net sales. Return on investment, turns, whatever you want. But I would say this is probably one of the most popular reports, whether you do it by class or by supplier. And then I would say the most valuable one that people run is the same type of thing, SKUs by class or SKUs by supplier, ranked by return on investment. So if I open that up and open it up, you're going to get a different look. It's not going to show you the same thing as net sales or quantity. You'll get it ranked by return on investment instead, which is really the most valuable to look at. So here in men's pants, it still lists the top 10 SKUs, but it ranks it by return on investment. This column over here, from top return on investment to bottom return on investment. So return on investment is, basically the return on investment will measure how many dollars of gross profit or margin you're getting back for each dollar you have invested in your inventory, based on your present rate of sales and average inventory for that period. RIC software calculates this ratio as a percentage, such as 175%, while it is sometimes calculated as a dollar amount, such as $1.75. What kind of return on investment am I getting for this product? RIC software considers this ratio, the return on investment, to be the most important and best overall indicator of performance in your store. It takes into consideration how quickly your inventory was sold, how much inventory you carried to generate those sales, and how profitable the sales were when they occurred. This is an excellent comparative tool because it may show that SKUs, classes, suppliers, etc. with the highest sales or the highest gross profit percent or the highest turnover rates are not necessarily your best performers and, not necessarily have the best return on investment. And then looking at a couple of other different types of reports, if I wanted to look at my top stores, if I was multi-store operation and I wanted to look at my top stores by net sales, this is one of those. Where it's looking at the top stores and it's ranking them by net sales. So if you look over in the sales section, you'll see it's going from top sales to bottom sales. So you'll see your top selling stores. If I choose the top suppliers by net sales, now remember when I choose suppliers, it's not listing the SKUs, it's really taking all of the SKUs, say in Nike, and that's how many you sold, the quantity and the sales. So it's ranking which is your most popular supplier from top to bottom based on the net sales. Then when I talked about the top suppliers grouped by class, that was one of the options that you could choose. So I'll open this up for you to take a look at. And this I'm doing by quantity. So it's doing my top suppliers grouped by class. So what it does is it lists the class and lists the top suppliers ranked within that class. And it's doing it by quantity on this report. So you'll see here's the class and here's the top quantity from top to bottom on the suppliers. And then it will move on to the next class and then all of those suppliers associated with that class. See here, it moves to the sock class and then any supplier that's associated with socks and ranks them by quantity top to bottom. And in the bestseller report, you can do the opposite where, it lists the vendor and then it lists the top selling classes within each vendor. So this is top classes grouped by supplier. So it just does the opposite. It lists the supplier and then all of the classes associated with that supplier. And then I did this by quantity sold as well. So it'll rank these by quantity. So if you're looking at Nike, here's all the classes within Nike, and since I'm ranking them by quantity, it puts the top quantity to the bottom quantity. Then we talked about just give me my list of the top 100 SKUs. So if I click on that, I'm strictly just going to see my top 100 SKUs. So I have top 100 SKUs by quantity sold. It's going to list my top selling SKUs by quantity sold from top quantity to bottom quantity, regardless of the class or supplier. So as you can see, there's many different ways of running these things. If you want to look at everything as a whole, whether you're looking at all your classes or all your suppliers or SKUs, or you can go back to that report criteria and maybe you only want to look at one supplier or a couple suppliers or one class or a few classes, etc. You can be specific as to what it is that you're trying to look at. And one thing, once we're looking at this report, you can do many things once you're in here. If you want to just scroll, you can use the scroll bar to the right. You can do the page icon to the next page, or you can do the previous page. You can click on the last page icon or the first page icon. You can search for anything on this by clicking on search, and then if you wanted to type in a SKU or a class or supplier, and then want to find that item for you. So you'll see that the search will come up here to the right and you can just type in what you're searching. You can email this report. So if I click on the email icon up at the top, it will automatically attach that report to an email and I can send that off to whoever I want. So once I click OK, my email will actually come up and attach that. If I want to print it from here, I can just click on the printer icon up at the top. Whether I want to print the entire report or maybe I just want to print the last page and I can tell what pages I want to print from. I could also print this to legal size paper. If this is too small on letter size paper, I could go to the properties and I could change that to legal size if I want to print it to legal instead of letter. And if I wanted to save it somewhere to my hard drive, I could just click on save and I could save that to any folder on my hard drive or desktop or wherever I want to do that. So lots of things that you can do once you're into this report history, actual report. We keep up to 7 days worth of reports. If you want to delete any of them, you can, otherwise they'll drop off after 7 days. I could edit this easily, so if I clicked on edit criteria, that exact report would come up on the screen, and maybe this time I wanted to do it to Excel instead of report format. I could easily just change it to whatever I want, add job and run, and then I'll get a new report here without having to physically go to that screen to do it. This edit criteria will take me there. And then if I wanted to print multiple reports, I could just click which ones I want to print, and there is a print all button. Once I click on print all, I'll be able to print anything that I have checked all at once, so I don't have to do them one at a time. And the other thing that people tend to do at the end of the month with their end of month reports, whether it's a batch of bestsellers reports or just a combination of different reports, is they'll create a saved batch. So to do that, you'll go to Reporting, Saved in Batch Reports, and click on Manage Batch Reports. And whether it's like an end of month report where you put a few bestseller reports in, sales analysis report, people normally will create like 5 to 10 reports and put it into a batch. So if I want to create a new one, I just click on Create New. Right now I don't have any batches in here, and I can call it whatever I want, whether it's bestseller batch or whether I want to do more of like an end of month report batch. I'm going to type end of month reports. And then if you've saved reports, you can make it really easy on yourself. You've already saved the report exactly how you want it. So now you can just choose whatever it is that you want. So once I select this and click on Add, that will add that as one of my reports that I want in my end of month report batch. So it'll list here down below. So if you wanted to change something about it, you could, but since you already saved it, that's how you want it, and then you'll see that it lists it here. And I always recommend when you name reports, always type what it is at the beginning, whether it's a bestsellers report or a sales analysis report as a part of your name. So that way it will show here and you'll know which ones you're adding. So then I can just select any other ones that I want and just click on Add, and that'll add that next one as well. And you can add as many as you like. We'll say that this is going to be the last one that I'm going to add. And when you have all the reports that you want in this batch, then you can just click on Save down at the bottom. See here it lists, I have 3 reports. I'll just save that, and now it's in there. And you'll see that it lists it here. So at the end of the month, or whenever really, you can go to Reporting, Saved in Batch Reports, and Run Batch Reports, and that will list any saved batches that you have. And I can just click on Run, and it will run those 3 reports automatically that I put in there for me, and it'll put it the report history. And there you have them. You can, open these up, look at them, print them out at your leisure. I recommend, if you're doing end of month reports, I recommend typing end of month in the description when you're naming it. So that way you know it's an end of month report. These are just test ones here. And then you can pull each one up or print them out. Do whatever you want. I will be doing these live webinars a couple times a month, so all will have different topics out there. So if there's any topics that you want to suggest, let me know. I'm in the training department, so it's just training@ricksoftware.com. You can shoot me an email. I'm going to be doing the schedule for webinars for 2011. So I'll be having that out there probably in January sometime. We'll start the webinars in February of 2011. This current webinar will be out on your Rick's Enterprise at any point in time. So all of the webinars, if you click on this video library to the top right, this will bring up all the videos that we've done, whether it's webinars or whether it's training videos on certain topics. So you will see all the webinars. So if you don't get on one of the live webinars, I will record it and it will be in this section. And it will tell you if it's a new one, you'll see that it's a new one. So those will be out there for whenever you need them. And then if you also look down, these are all of the training videos on certain topics, whether it has to do with setup or point of sale or reporting or inventory. You'll see all of those topics there. But if you ever have any questions, you can also call support or send an email to support. It's support@ricksoftware.com for the regular support and training@ricksoftware.com for the training department. So let us know how we can help you out, and thank you for taking the time to listen to the Best Sellers webinar.